Welcome to this tutorial on how to use the Tim Ferriss fear setting exercise template in Coda. This template is based on a really popular TED Talk that Tim Ferriss gave. And in the template itself, you'll actually see the video embedded in the doc. You can click on play to start watching it. And it's about a 13-minute video. And if you want to read more about where this fear setting exercise came from, you can actually go to the original blog post, which is also linked here in the doc. But this is the full blog post right here. And this is an exercise that Tim does every single month, and which is why it became a really popular TED Talk. So fear setting is a really great exercise that you should do. I think in general, it helps you frame a big decision you're about to make, whether it's taking on a new job, getting into a new relationship, as Tim calls it, and just other big decisions that you're about to make in your life. And in fact, if you read more in the doc, this exercise actually led Tim to take a 15-month break to travel around the world, which was the inspiration for the 4-hour work week, which we all have come to love. So this exercise is really useful for you, and this template will make the exercise very organized and structured so that you can do this exercise for yourself on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis, whatever makes sense for you. So this is the doc, and when you are ready to get started, you can scroll down here and click on Define. So when you click on this, it's going to bring you to this section. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm also going to hide this sidebar. And in this section where you define your fears, a very difficult exercise, obviously, for most people, because it's kind of digging deep into your deepest and darkest fears and putting them down on paper, or rather in this case, into a Coda doc. So the exercise here first starts with a question. What if I ... So in Tim's example, he talks about taking his first vacation in 4 years. And if you know a little bit about Tim's background, he was actively doing his own business, and he was working just crazy hours every week. And he thought about what if he could take some vacation after not having taken a vacation in 4 years. And he tried to define all the fears that he had for this question of taking his first vacation in 4 years. So this is really basically the table that you have to fill out. I'm going to clear, if you click on this button, you can clear the data below. I'm just going to clear it for now. And you notice that everything gets cleared out. So in Tim's example, what were some of his fears for taking his first vacation in 4 years? And the first one was he thought about if he gets to London, it'll be raining and foggy, and he's going to be depressed. So he put that over here. And this, again, can be whatever your question is, whatever the big defining question is in your life, taking on a new job, starting a new relationship, traveling. You can put all your fears in this table. He also thought that he was going to miss a letter from the IRS, and that if he misses that letter, then it would make his business go out of business. And that was also another fear. And again, these are all examples you can actually get from watching the TED Talk, but this is just putting his example into the template. And the final thing is in this column right here is the impact. Now you define here for whether or not it's a very little impact, which is 1, or if it's high impact, which is life ending. If this fear actually becomes the scenario, then your life will basically be over. And so in Tim's case, he put that it'll be rainy and foggy in London, but he put an impact of about 4. And for missing a letter from the IRS, he put an impact of 3. It's not a life-ending situation, but it's also not it also will affect his business in some way. So once you have defined your fears, in this case there's only 2, you can go on to how you can prevent these scenarios from happening. So you click on Prevent, and you get to this section right here. So you have defined your fears in this section, in this column. Now you're going to write down what you can do to prevent or decrease the likelihood of these scenarios from happening. So in Tim's case, he suggested that if he were to go to London and he might get depressed, one thing he could do to prevent that from happening is bring a portable blue light to decrease depression, because that's been shown to decrease depression. And another simple way to prevent missing the letter from the IRS is just redirecting the mailing address for the IRS. And as you're doing this prevent, you can also change the impact if you'd like, but for most intents and purposes, it probably should stay consistent as you're going from define to prevent to repair. So you've indicated a few ways you can prevent this worst case scenario. Now let's talk about repairing the damage. Now, what happens if the worst case scenario does indeed happen? So here's where you can repair, write in how you can repair the damage from this worst case scenario happen. We have our worst case scenario, we have ways we can prevent it. Now let's figure out how we can repair in the instance that this actually happens. Tim suggests in the TED Talk to obviously reach out to people, because chances are someone has dealt with this fear before in the past. It's not a unique problem. So let's say in the worst case scenario, he does get depressed and he needs a way to repair the damage. So he, in the TED Talk, talks about going to Spain to get some sun. And this would, a quick flight to Spain to reverse some of the damage from all the rain and fogginess in London. And finally, if he does indeed miss a letter from the IRS and his business is in trouble, the way you can repair this is by calling a friend who is a lawyer to see what they could do to ameliorate the situation. So we went from the worst case scenario and define to how we could prevent this scenario, finally to what we could do in the event that the worst case scenario happens, how we could repair the damage. So we've done all the work for defining our fears and ways that we can prevent and repair it. Now let's talk about the upside. So this is all the good news. We've been talking about the bad news so far. Let's talk about the good news. So here in this template, or this section rather, I'm going to clear the data first. And the main question you want to ask yourself is, what might be the benefits of an attempt or partial success? Meaning in this scenario, if Tim were to fly to London, and obviously he did because he went on this huge trip, what would some benefits be? And in addition to writing down the benefit, you also should write down whether or not the duration is permanent or temporary. And you notice it changes colors when you pick it, and also whether or not the change is internal, whether or not the benefit is internal or external. And you can also put an impact, a positive impact, for how this will impact your life. So a few things that Tim put, I'm just going to copy these from the original template, was he would get a new understanding of a new culture. This is a permanent benefit from traveling for vacation. This is an internal thing that happens to himself, and the impact is really high. It's like a 9 out of 10. It's, learning new culture is obviously great. Secondly, is not having to rely on supplements or drugs to stay awake or go to sleep. That was something that he was undergoing when he was doing his business, and so the duration is permanent as well because you're getting off of drugs, and the impact is just awesome. It's 10. And no more phone calls about your business. This is actually a temporary thing, because when he goes back to his business, he'll probably still get calls, or as you all know, that he started automating things with the 4-hour Workweek. This is an external, not an internal kind of benefit. And not a big impact, but not as big. We'll call it a 7 in this case. And then finally, meeting new people every day he wouldn't otherwise meet. Also a temporary thing that happens when you travel, and also it doesn't happen internally, it's external. And this obviously has a high impact because meeting people is part of living, right? So you have identified the benefits of success. And finally, the biggest part of this template is what happens if you don't make a decision. So Tim calls this the cost of inaction. And this section is so important that we put in a video about from Tim Ferriss about why this cost of inaction is so important for fear setting. So I'm going to clear some of this data below, and let's talk about what Tim put for basically if you were to do nothing, if you don't make this decision, in this case of traveling abroad, what are some of the costs or downsides of not making the action? And so short term, Tim had put a few things here. Won't be able to travel because of a wedding, and perhaps if he doesn't go, then his business continues to grow and will require him to work 10 more hours per week. Another cost of not going on his trip is that he might start getting sick because of all the supplements he's taking. And finally, more long-term costs of inaction, and these are much more drastic, is he won't be able to meet a significant other. And finally, if and when he settles down, he most likely won't get to travel as extensively as he did when he went on this huge trip. So these costs are very important for you to figure out for your cost of inaction, and these will typically outweigh, or sorry, um, these costs will definitely be much. You have to balance these costs with the benefits of going to make the decision. So finally, putting it all together in the summary, this is where things get really interesting. So for me, this will be your name once it shows up. But you put it in your summary of your worst case scenarios. This was when you go to London, it'll be rainy and foggy. You'll miss a letter from IRS. This is showing the ideas that you had for preventing this worst case scenario and also the ways you can repair. And these are just pulled from the things that you filled out in the first three sections. And if you remember the impact score, this is also really interesting. If you remember, you put down the impact of each of these things, fears. This is the average score. Now, this is really important as we look at the benefits. So here were the four benefits that we put in for gaining understanding of new culture, no more phone calls. And you notice that the score is so much greater than the worst case scenario. So this is where part of the philosophy of fear setting is that the perceived impact of all the fears seems to be high, but when you actually put some numbers behind it, it's actually really low. And the benefits you receive from making this big decision totally outweigh the perceived impact of the negative decision or the negative aspects of the decision. And finally, this is a summary of all the costs of your inaction. We just wrote these down for 6 months, 1 year, and 3 years. And that is the template. And some final parting words is from one of Tim Ferriss's guests from Jersey Gregorick was easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. This template will help you make those hard choices to have an easy life. And hopefully you found this template and doc really useful for helping you fear set and also helping you make the hard decisions in your life. Now, before I go, I'm just going to show you quickly what this looks like on mobile. Because once you fill this out and you want to keep track of what it looks like on your phone, this is what it looks like. And it's super handy to see all the things that you wrote. As you remember, we here had the define section where we defined our fears. Maybe scroll down here, or we should click on the prevent. These are ways you can prevent the fears. So it shows up right underneath the fear itself. So you can change the mailing address in the IRS. Ways you can repair is also shown right below the actual fear itself. And let's go to the next section, benefits of success. This looks at that table with the permanent and internal and external benefits. The cost of inaction is simply just a small table here. You can look at the full table if you click on this icon. And finally, the summary is the most useful part when you look at it. Look at your fear setting template on mobile. You have all your fears, the way you can prevent them, the way you can repair them, the average score, also the benefits. So you can always keep this in your back pocket, or rather in your phone, to make sure have a kind of a mental check of how you think about making this big decision in your life. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial.